Good afternoon, grade 3, 4s, 5s. I hope you're enjoying some of this beautiful weather we're having. I want you to bring to lesson today your ukulele, some kind of rhythm instrument, your worksheet from last week, which we'll take up together, your worksheet from this week, and also if you have from Pilgrim's Progress this sheet, because we're going to add one more rhythm to that. Okay, so if you have all those things, great. We'll be ready to get started. So the first thing I would like to do is to review last week's rhythm, the worksheet that we would have had that looked like this. Okay, so what we wanted to have you do at the top was to fill in an appropriate note that goes with each of these rests or half rest, quarter rest, all of these, okay? And then down at the bottom, what you were to do is to answer each of these equations, math, kind of music equations, with a note. So let's start here. Quarter rest, quarter note. Eighth note, eighth rest. Whole note, whole rest. Eighth rest, quarter rest, quarter note. Half rest, half note. Eighth rest, eighth note. Whole rest, the one that hangs down, just think of it being heavier, a greater value. Whole note. Quarter rest, quarter note. Half rest, half note. And then down here, you're to answer each of these in the box with a note. So a quarter note plus a quarter note equals a half note. 1 plus 1 equals 2. Half beat, or an eighth note together equal 1 beat, a quarter note. A quarter note plus an eighth note, so that's a half a beat, is 1.5 beats. So that's how we put the dot behind a note, gives it half as much of the value it's following. So that's a beat and a half, a dotted quarter note. A dotted quarter note plus an eighth note together equal a half note. A half note worth 2 plus a quarter note is 1 equals 3. So there's your half note with a dot behind it. You added half as much as the note it was following. So 2 and half of 2 is 1. So 2 plus 1 is 3. That's how the dot works. Then we have 2 half notes, each worth 2 beats. 2 plus 2 is 4, a whole note. Pair of eighth notes worth 1. Another pair of eighth notes worth 1. So 1 plus 1 equals 2, half note. Pair of eighth notes worth 1 plus an eighth note. So that's 1 plus a half a beat, dotted quarter note. Then 3 pairs of eighth notes, 1 beat together, 1 beat together, 1 beat together. 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 3. And there's your eighth pair, also worth 1, plus another beat is 1, plus 2 more equal 4, and there's your whole note. All right, I hope you were able to follow that along nicely, and that worked out well for you. Now, if you can grab the worksheet from this week, this is what it looks like, a cube. Now, you'll notice on the cube you have a top part, you have a side part, and you have a front part. Okay, so for the top here, you have questions that are across. So number 1, top across, the second month, and it's an abbreviated form. So using our ability to read notes in the bass clef, great bulls don't fight always, so great bulls don't fight. That would be an F. So then you'd write F right there. Then the spaces in the bass clef are all cows eat. That's an E. So you'd write an E there. And then the last letter is great bulls. That's a B. So you'd put B there. F-E-B, a short form for February, abbreviation, which is the second month of the year. So that's how you fill that out, okay? So this is the top, across, down, across, down. This is the side here, across and down. And then these are the front, across and down. Okay, so work through that, and we'll take that up together next week. Now, if you can grab your ukulele, we're just going to review our C scale, and then we're going to do cooperation hop, and then I'd really like you to try and play your ukulele as I'm going to play it on the piano today. Okay, so let's start with our C note. I'll move this down a little bit so you hopefully can see my ukulele okay. All right, so this note is C, D, E, F, And those are the notes of the scale. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. All right. Now let's review cooperation hop. Let's do the chords on that one. Okay. Do, do, wop, do the cooperation hop. Once you start, you never wanna stop. Jump right in, don't be left out. 'Cause friends helping friends is what it's all about. Shooby dooby 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 doo wop. Do the cooperation hop. Okay, now let's try that. I'm going to play it on the piano. And you're going to try and play along in the ukulele. I'll try and go fairly slowly, okay? Do-do-wop, do the cooperation hop. Once you start, you'll never want to stop. Jump right in, don't be left out. 'Cause friends helping friends is what it's all about. Shooby dooby 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 doo wop. Do the cooperation hop. Do do wop, do the cooperation hop. Once you start, wanna stop. Jump right in, don't be left out. 'Cause friends helping friends is what it's all about. Shooby dooby 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 doo wop. Do the cooperation hop. Good job. Hopefully you're able to keep up with that a little bit. Just keep working on that, and perhaps we'll try some new music the next time we get together. Okay, now I hope you have your rhythm instrument, and we are going to go on to our story of Pilgrim's Progress. Let's review quickly some of the rhythms we've done. All right. City of Destruction. And then we have Mr. Goodwill. And we have Palace Beautiful. And this is the new one today, Valley of Destruction. Valley of Humiliation. So those are all eighth notes. So the way you would do that if you had your rhythm instrument, remember your hand could work perfectly. Valley of Humiliation, all eighth notes, okay? So when we get to that, that is the newest part of our story. So on your sheet, you could take your sheet there and notice that we have skipped a few of the names. We'll get to those, but Valley of Humiliation, you could put 4 pairs of eighth notes along the bottom there, okay? Got that? Valley of Humiliation. So let's pick up with our story where we left off with Pilgrim, also called Christian. Oh, maybe I better review the first sheet too. I don't think we talked about that one yet, okay? So, City of Destruction, Pilgrim, or Christian as he's now called, Evangelist, and Celestial City. Okay, so that covers all the rhythms thus far. So Pilgrim, Christian Pilgrim, had left the Palace Beautiful, and at that point they had given him clear instructions to remember to do 2 things. Do you remember what those 2 things were? Watch and pray. Well, Christian was pretty excited to continue on his journey, and it wasn't long before his journey when he was starting to get a little distracted. He was starting to look here and there, and every so often he'd pull out over his sword or his shield, and it had a reflection of him, and he would look at it and he'd think, wow, I look pretty fine. I'm all in my shiny armory. I am all ready to go. And he started thinking a lot about himself and how good he looked and how amazing everything was. And he started to hum some songs, and he began, not really watching around him. And he began to notice that even though he was supposed to have been walking downhill, it was almost the opposite effect. He felt like he was walking uphill and he was working against gravity. He thought, this is very odd. But he didn't pay a lot of attention because he was far too concerned about the way he looked and what he was wearing. Well, it wasn't long before he started to really realize he had started to head downhill. And all of a sudden, he found himself in the valley of humiliation. And it was at this point he realized how much attention he'd been paying to himself rather than the attention he should have been paying to what was going on around him. And he noticed there in the valley of humiliation, there was somebody or something waiting for him. And as he rounded the corner, all of a sudden, Apollyon leapt out at him. And he had sword and he had a spear and he began throwing them at Christian. And Christian put up his shield and tried to shield himself, and he was able to shield himself. But Apollyon came closer and closer, and he had just a horrible laugh. He said, "Ha ha, so you got all your armor on and you're headed to the celestial city. But you may be a Christian pilgrim, but you are not a good one. You were not thinking about where you're going. You completely missed the direction you were, and now you've headed into my valley, the valley of humiliation. You are so consumed with yourself and thinking about yourself and all the good things that you did that you got distracted, and now you're mine." Well, Pilgrim said, "I am not yours. I am a child of the good king. He took my burden away when I knelt at the cross. I left the city of destruction, and I am headed to the good king, to the beautiful celestial city." Ha, 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 Apollyon continued to laugh and continued to throw his fiery darts at him. And at one point, he took his foot and Apollyon knocked Pilgrim right over on the ground. And he sat back and he put the shield up in front of him and said, "No, in the name of the good king, you cannot harm me. He is my king, and I serve him and only him." And with that, he shoved his sword into Apollyon. And Apollyon went running off, screaming, "Oh!" And off he went. Pilgrim was safe. But Pilgrim was humiliated. Here, he had been told to watch and pray, and he hadn't done either of those things since he left the palace beautiful. Instead, he was consumed with himself and all the good things he could do and how great he looked and all the things he had. He was humiliated, and he was in the valley of humiliation. Humiliation is when we are embarrassed or we are ashamed or we feel badly for something we've done. And we just feel like we are no good anymore. But Pilgrim pulled out his word and he began to pray and read the word. And he read how the good king loved him even when Christian Pilgrim got distracted. He still loved him, and he still wanted him to continue the journey onto the celestial city. So Christian Pilgrim got up and he dusted all the dust off him, and he wiped and he tried to buff out some of the scratches that were on his armor that he should have been watching and praying and protecting. And he looked up and continued his journey. He knew he had made an error, but he was reminded that the good king had forgiven him of his burden, and he wanted him to continue the journey. But he was to watch, and he was to pray, so he could continue and eventually safely reach the celestial city. Next time we get together, we'll find out how far Pilgrim gets, if he makes it all the way to there or not. You have a good weekend, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.